This is the Sixth Man Show, an Orlando Magic podcast, with your hosts, Kevin Tucker and Jonathan Osborne, covering all things Magic basketball. By fans, for fans. Go Magic! What's going on, Orlando Magic fans? You guys are back with the Sixth Man Show. Today is August 1st, 2024. Jonathan Osborne here. And now, as always, joined by my co-host, Kevin Tucker. Kevin, what's going on, man? It's kind of hard to believe that it's August already. Like, I feel like August means the year is almost over, even though we're like just a little bit beyond, like halfway through the year.
August means we're another step beyond. I mean, half is June, right? Once you get through June is the 6 months of the year. So we're already a month past halfway. So now we're like 5 months out from the end of the year, counting down to Christmas, counting it down to all those things. But yeah, no, I'm good. August to me means that cooler weather is coming, right? Like right now,
Not
it's
in
like
August.
I mean, we're closer.
Not
to
even
cooler.
in September.
We're closer, Jonathan. Help me out here. We're one step closer to cooler weather. That's what it says to me. I don't mind the heat, but it is right about this time of year where I'm like, can we just go back to the winter and stuff? Because obviously winter, Florida, whether it's Florida or South Georgia, winters are amazing. So yeah, we're getting there, getting closer to that, getting closer to surgery. That's right around the corner for me. So August means we're in the month of my surgery. 11 days away as we're listening to this. So yeah, definitely excited to be here though and talk some Magic basketball, unlike the last episode, by the way.
Obviously your surgery is very important, but I feel like we've talked about that a good bit.
I don't care about that.
But I didn't want to be like, anyways, kind of jumping over that. Yeah, but we have like the NFL like Hall of Fame game is coming up in a couple of weeks, and then I know it sucks.
Couple weeks,
but
it's a couple days.
Is it really? It's this
today
week
or next Thursday?
Holy smokes! All right, well then. There we are.
I think it's today, Jonathan.
Okay, well then, here we are then. But then we've got like NFL preseason, which, the first couple of possessions of each of the first, few, preseason games don't mean much. Preseason in general probably doesn't mean much, but it just signifies that, like, I know you're not doing fantasy football this year, but fantasy football drafts are right around the corner, and my birthday's coming up in a few weeks, and then we're right into the NFL season, and I know college football is right around the corner as well. So, like, all of that stuff will hold us over for a few weeks until, like, Orlando Magic Media Day. And, now that you're listening to this in August, Media Day is literally next month. I think it's scheduled for September 30th. So we have that, and then we're right into training camp and NBA preseason, and then we're really into the swing of things. All the holidays, and then the end of the year is pretty much over. So,
yeah, it's a good time. Jonathan, can we just talk about the last episode really fast?
We could talk about it for an hour and 49 minutes if you want.
I just want to say, like, we've never done anything like that in the history of the show. A show completely dedicated to anything not Magic related. And when we did it, we were like, I don't know if anyone's going to like it. But people seem to like it. I had a good time. You had a good time. I think it's going to have to be like an annual event that we do. We're certainly not going to make it a habit of it. But I thought it was really fun, and I'm glad at least the viewers and listeners, for the most part, thought so too. It was pretty fun.
Yeah, I think once a year, is an appropriate amount to do that. It's fun, just sort of like a change of pace. And yeah, I wasn't sure that we were going to have enough questions to fill an episode. Let alone, like, we arguably could have gotten like 3 episodes out of, an hour and 49 minutes. So appreciate that. Appreciate everybody that sent questions and everybody that tuned in. For the most part, I don't know that we've gotten a comment like, hey, this sucks, don't ever do it again. Most people, kind of liked it, at least a little bit. And like I said, it was a nice change of pace. So that was fun. And yeah, we'll have to do it, once a year or so.
Yeah, it'll be fun. But back to regularly scheduled programming, Magic basketball.
Correct. So this past, Tuesday, Germany took on Brazil in their second group stage game of the Olympics, and they won 86-73. Now, it looked like Germany was like running away with this game in the first half, and then Brazil, made a bit of a run to keep it pretty tight. And then Germany, like, just towards the end of the game, they pulled away and won in pretty convincing fashion. Franz Wagner, who is 5th in the Olympic tournament right now in points per game, I think at 19.5. He had 17 points, 4 rebounds in this one, 7 of 15 from the floor. 7 of 9 on twos, 0 of 6 from three. I think he's shooting like 17% from behind, 14% from behind the arc in the tournament. 1 for 7 so far. When you couple that with the way that he shot in the friendlies, doesn't really instill a ton of confidence when it comes to Franz's 3-point shooting heading into next year. But through a couple of games and really through their friendlies as well, Germany looks really good. Their next game is going to be Friday at 3:00 Eastern, taking on probably what most people think is one of the strongest, or certainly in this Group B, it's going to be Germany and France. And Germany and France at this point, I would have to say, are probably one of the favorites to win the tournament. Obviously, Team USA has been rolling to big wins. Canada's been playing well. Australia has been playing well, even though Australia did have a loss to Canada.
Yeah.
But yeah, a lot of strong teams in this Olympic tournament. Greece is they're down 0-2, so the odds of making the knockout round for Greece, looks pretty slim. They could end up third place in their group, and then I think like the top 2 or 3 third place teams from the groups are going to advance. So we'll just have to keep an eye on a lot of that stuff. But Franz has been playing well. Mo Wagner's been playing well also. But the 3-point shooting for Franz just, like I said, not really instilling a ton of confidence.
Yeah, it's tough because it's just like the season he had for the Magic. Doing everything really well. One of the best players in this tournament, except the shooting is still not there. We saw glimpses of it earlier this summer. We thought it wasn't perfect, but it was like, okay, maybe it's better. But man, as these games have gone along, it's just not there. And I've been saying I'm not concerned, but at some point I have to start to be, right. Like where is that line where we as Magic fans go, okay, something's going on here, and it's not right. And I don't know what the solution is. Obviously, I'm not a professional basketball player or whatever. I don't know how to fix it, but we're almost there where I'm like, we got to figure this out, because this is not good for the long term. But I guess we'll have to see how the rest of the summer goes for him.
Yeah, it's just so odd. I know we've had this conversation a million times, but the fact that his rookie year, he shoots 35% from the floor. Second year, shoots 36% from the floor. And then this past year, 28% not from the floor, from behind the arc, excuse me. Yeah. 35%, 36%, 28% this past year. The fact that it has gone so far the other way is what is concerning. For me, I'm not going to take, what might be a 5 or 6 game run in this tournament. I'm not going to put too much stock into that. He's still going to have a month plus. He'll probably take a week or so after the Olympics to unwind and recover, of course. Then he's going to have almost a month before training camp, and obviously he'll have a few weeks during the preseason to sort of get himself right. Give me 15 games of the regular season, and if we're still sub 30%, that's probably when I'm going to start feeling pretty concerned. So if you're concerned already, I understand that. I'm just hoping to believe that it's going to come back to what we saw the first couple of years. I think it makes the most sense that it would be really weird for it to just drop off of a cliff and stay the way that it has been. Some not exactly Orlando Magic related news came out yesterday. What was that? Tuesday. There was a report that the Trailblazers will be looking to trade either Anfernee Simons or Jeremy Grant before training camp, says an NBA insider. There are teams that have been linked to trading for Jeremy Grant, potentially the Los Angeles Lakers, and Anfernee Simons has been linked to the Orlando Magic, but no offers supposedly have been exchanged at this point. But Kevin, I just wanted to ask you, is that a deal that you would be interested in? If so, what do you think a deal like that looks like? What would that do to the makeup of this roster? What would it take for that move to happen? Just what are your overall thoughts on potentially making a move for Anfernee Simons?
Yeah, my initial reaction is, when you factor in what has been done this offseason, where does Anfernee Simons fit in, right? Because you go sign KCP, the backcourt is set in stone as far as I'm concerned. Like it is Jalen and KCP, period. Like that's your starting backcourt. So if you're going out and acquiring an Anfernee Simons, are you acquiring him to become a sixth man? Does Anfernee Simons want to become a sixth man, right? I mean, let me back up. In his current situation, that might be happening anyway. I don't even know how many games he started last year, to be honest. But in this situation, would he want to accept a deal to come to Orlando, come off the bench? I don't know. Maybe. He might look at our roster, might look at the fact that we won 47 games last year and are on the rise, and maybe he wants to be a part of it and come off the bench. But if that does happen, then that means you got to include probably Cole Anthony in a deal. Like it's hard to imagine trading for an Anfernee Simons and not including Cole Anthony, because if you somehow do that, then now all of a sudden you have Cole Anthony and Anfernee Simons coming off the bench. In addition to, you already have Gary Harris, another guard there, not to mention all the other guys, Anthony Black, Jet Howard, all the other guys that could be playing in the backcourt. So all that to say, if this was before KCP signing, I think there could really be something to that. Now, however, I would be really surprised if they did something like this, unless it was to bring him off the bench. And if that is the case, sign me up for Anfernee Simons as like your just absolute bucket getter off the bench. Like, are you kidding me? That would be amazing, depending on what you give up for him. But in that role, I would be thrilled to see that happen.
So I would tend to agree with most of that, especially like this is a move that is probably much more likely pre-KCP for a couple of reasons. Like if you're making a trade for Anfernee Simons, you would have had cap space to just sort of absorb him into the cap space. You don't necessarily need to match contracts. At this point where we are, you would, have to, match the money to a certain extent. From looking at the Magic's current contracts, the only deal that really makes sense to me, it would be Cole Anthony and Wendell Carter Jr. for Anfernee Simons. But again, in my mind, and this is going to lead into our next question, but in my mind, the starting backcourt is set, like you said, Jalen Suggs, Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. You're trading for Anfernee Simons, a guy who the last 2 years has started every game that he's played. He played 62 games 2 years ago. He played 46 games last season. Is that a guy who is, by the way, making $25 million that is going to want to come off the bench? And are you going to pay a guy $25 million to come off the bench? It seems unlikely to me. Yep. That being said, if they were to make that move and Anfernee Simons is on board with just being, I'm going to come off the bench and it's going to be the Anfernee Simons show, sign me up.
Mm-hmm.
As much as I think it would hurt losing Wendell, you at that point have to turn Mo Wagner and Goga Bitadze really into a competent center rotation, which we saw in spurts last year. I think people forget that as good as Goga looked at times, he also looked equally as bad at times.
Especially at the end of the year.
Correct. So I don't know that Goga is this guy that is ready to be your full-time, starting center. I don't think Mo Wagner is that guy either. I think both of those guys are best suited in like a backup role. So for a lot of the reasons that we've just mentioned, I don't really think I would be on board for that. One thing that is making me think, and this is not speculation, it's just like that's interesting.
I'm scared.
Jalen Suggs has not signed an extension yet. So if you were looking to shake up the starting line, and let me just preface this, everybody that is just taking a breath, or you're like Kevin, who is having like cardiac an episode right now or anything like that, I don't want the Magic to do this. I don't think they should do this. I don't think they will do this. But if you were looking to input Anfernee Simons into the starting lineup and you were to move on from Cole Anthony, I'm just gonna try this here. If it's Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs, does the money work? Unfortunately, the money does work if the move was for Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs for Anfernee Simons. I'm not advocating for this. I would shed actual tears if the Magic traded Jalen Suggs. The extension doesn't really play into that, I don't believe. I think if you sign the extension, I don't know how soon you are eligible to be traded. So that's sort of where I'm like, what's going on? Why haven't we seen an extension yet? I don't know if maybe they're trying to kick the can down the road with the cap, although even without a Jalen Suggs extension, you're probably over the cap next year anyway, so it doesn't make a lot of sense to do that. Sort of like what we saw with Tyrese Maxey, who put off the extension for a year, waited so the 76ers would have more cap space. They used that to go out and get Paul George. And then Maxey gets the max anyways and ends up getting more money in the long run. I don't think that is what is going on. But again, it's just one of those things to me that is like, why has it not been signed yet?
Jonathan, have you ever watched Charlie Brown or the Peanuts or anything like that?
Sure.
You know how when the teacher talks, it's just wah, wah, wah. As soon as you talked about Jalen Suggs potentially being traded, I didn't hear anything after that. So,
yeah,
dude, come on. Like,
what did I say? I said I wouldn't do it. They shouldn't do it. I don't want them to do it.
I know. But the fact that has even been uttered on this show is just,
But
I'm shook.
if your goal is to bring Anfernee Simons, I think that is the order of operations that makes it make the most sense.
True.
Trading Anfernee Simons and him coming off the bench, or trading Jalen Suggs and putting Anfernee Simons into the starting lineup, I think they're both incredibly unlikely. But I think the scenario where you're paying Anfernee Simons $25 million to come off the bench, I think that is less likely.
Yes. I will say from a Magic perspective, maybe. From a Portland perspective, that doesn't fix Portland's problems. Right? If all of a sudden they're acquiring Cole Anthony and Jalen Suggs, now they've got four dudes in those two guard spots, with Shaden Sharp and who's the other? Scoot Henderson.
Scooty.
Scoot and Shaden, Jalen, Cole. Like, what are they going to do with that? I don't know.
Fair. That's a fair point.
I have a hard time thinking that this extension thing, it's two separate conversations, right? With the almost said Shaden Sharp. With the Anfernee Simons stuff, that just does not seem like a Weltman thing to do. Like, to trade.
I'm 100% correct.
A defense.
I totally agree.
I'm talking through this. Just the defensive anchor that Jalen is, the heart and soul that he is for this team, trading him for a bucket getter, but that's about it. With Anfernee Simons, great bucket getter. Again, be thrilled to have him here. He doesn't match the identity of this team. That would surprise me. And then I guess the second conversation is about the extension. There are some people that are speculating about it. It doesn't do anything for me. Like, how many other times in NBA history or even Magic history recently have we seen guys wait to be signed to extensions in October? Like, I mean, even Cole. Yeah, it's Cole Anthony. Just, was it last year? Last year had that extension. That was like October 20 something, I think, or teens or something. Like, I mean, we were like in preseason, maybe like right before the regular season, or maybe it was right after the regular season started. I can't remember.
No, I'm pretty sure that was right before the season started.
Yeah, that's what I thought. I thought it was right between the preseason and regular season.
Because we asked him about it at Media Day last year.
Yeah, I don't think anything of it. You could argue it's weird that Franz gets his extension, almost a month ago now, I guess it's been. And then we're still sitting here waiting for Jalen, maybe. But I don't know. I don't think there's anything in it. I'd like to think they'd at least already had conversations, between Jalen's camp and, the franchise. Who knows? But yeah, I struggle with picturing Jalen being traded at all. I don't think 100%. The extension has anything to do with it. But yeah, that's kind of my take on both of those.
So I'm looking here, like, regardless of what the Magic do, like, they're not going to have cap space next summer. So the idea of like, we're sort of kicking the can down the road, that to me doesn't really like jive.
And I think it'd be one thing if this was like a quote unquote prove it year for Jalen, like if in his first 3 years,
if
we hadn't quite seen enough from him, but the fact that he has literally gotten better every year, has become one of the best defensive players in the league, and is more than serviceable as a 3-point shooter now, which this team desperately needs. And again, has just gotten better, has again become the heart and soul of this team, of this fan base. If any of those things weren't true, maybe
arguably
I'd buy
the city.
Yeah. If any of those things weren't true, maybe I'd buy it as like, okay, this is his prove it year. They're waiting to see what he looks like before they pull the trigger on a extension. But no, I just don't buy any of it. None of it worries me. They're going to get a deal done, and we're not even going to be worrying about it, by the time the season tips off, I think.
And I also find it interesting because, like, he's named to the USA select team and then doesn't participate in any of the scrimmages at all. Which true. Around that time I was speculating, like, okay, he like must be hearing from his agent, like, hey, we're about to get something done. Like, you don't want to be out there and hurt yourself. Or, hey, we're getting something done this offseason. Maybe it wasn't anything that was imminent, but like, hey, like we've heard from John and Jeff or Jeff and Anthony Parker, excuse me,
right,
that at some point this summer we're going to get it done. It's not a matter of if, but when.
Yeah.
So,
yeah, I'm sure that's what it was. It was just like, hey, until you sign that extension, don't even play any kind of intense basketball that could risk an injury. I think that's certainly what it was. It's just like Tristan Wirfs. I mean, Tristan Wirfs is, well, that's football for you. But yeah, right now he's not doing contact in camp right now for that same reason, because of the contract issue. So anyway, yeah, I'm not worried about it. I think there's nothing to worry about with Jalen.
All right, we're going to take a quick break here before we talk about our expectations heading into this season, which those were all questions that we were like, hey, we'll lead into the show with this, and then we'll sort of get into what we're really going to talk about. But now we are 20 minutes in here. But we're going to take a quick word from our patrons, the folks that help financially support the show and help make each and every episode possible. A big shout out to Adam Hunter, who joined at our all-star tier this week. Thanks so much for the support, Adam. Whenever we have brand new patrons, we give them a special shout out just like that. And then we shout out our Hall of Fame and Elite tier patrons each and every episode. So let's go ahead and start by shouting out the Court Cousins, Drew Gooden, Armin Carson, Tulo Ellis, Jonathan Borges, Normal Magic Player History, Gabe Gaines, Wiffle, Michael Martin, Jamel Miller, Michael Salapong, Donkey Punch, Dave Palin, Francis Warmth, Pierre A., Dylan Holden, Mr. Mikey, Eduardo Sanchez, Danimal, Bobby Skinner, Goody 93, Teddy Sylvia, Dalk Lopez, Fuchsia, Bill Fulton, Edmund Lagone, Jose Esquilin, Caleb Pete, Cannibalism, Time Mr. TV, ESPN Really Sucks, Gear 95, Shred, Junior Bruce, African, Shahin 177, Bobby the Dawn, Himlo Bam Himro, Improv 221, Rapistrana, Magic Kid 714, Mysterious Mosley, Irish Magic Mike, Austin Lampy, Random Hustle, Only Franz, Maria, Keith Walsh, Fritz, Bruv Sal, Kason Green, Santi Leon, K Neckler, The Distracted Mod Simpson, Chansu, Tom Gadsden, Dead Air, Richard Tuttle, Jeremiah Quintero, Magic Wire Debo 1980, Magic Matt, Michael Thompson, Mama Richmond, Next Snappa, What's Off Players 2024, Dylan Fay, David Duffy, Smith, Sheik, Ship Sinks, Bueno Time, Stantino 1995, Suggs Muggs, Daniel Anderson, Barry, Mackle, Caney, and Will Spivey. Again, a big thank you to all of our patrons. If you would like to join the Patreon, you can go to patreon.com/the6man show.
Jonathan, before we move on, what year were you born?
1993.
We're getting ready to talk about our expectations for some of these Magic players. And I'm sitting here realizing, I think this is the first time in Orlando Magic history, my fandom of Orlando Magic history, that every player on the team was born after, not just me, but also you. With the departure of Joe Ingles.
Oh, no.
With the departure of Joe Ingles. This is where we are, my brother. Yeah.
Corey Joseph has me beat.
Oh, has you beat, but not me beat.
Yeah, sorry, you old fart.
Rip.
You old man.
Oh, man. You hate to see it.
Wow.
All right,
that's really unfortunate for you.
You win this round.
I'm younger than Kentavious Caldwell-Pope by about 6 months and a week.
Unbelievable.
Look at that. That's really unfortunate for you.
I stand corrected. You're right. Corey Joseph is actually just slightly older than me.
Okay,
so I'm good.
We're good.
Cool. All right.
But the fact that day is
strike
upon
it from the
us.
record. Yeah, that's
I remember when I started to get into like my mid 20s and just thinking like I'm older than all these kids. Like I used to look up to guys coming out of high school and guys coming out of college into the NBA. But when you reach the point that you're older than all those guys, you're like, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And the fact that we're now almost older than an entire NBA team.
Yep.
That is pretty. There probably is an NBA team out there like the Grizzlies or the Oklahoma City Thunder where like we are older than all of those guys. But at least for now, it's not our favorite team, the Orlando Magic.
But even like watching the Olympics, I mean, we're watching like teenagers out there winning gold medals, and I'm just like, oh boy, that's all right.
Let's stop talking about how old we are. It makes me feel bad about myself.
All right.
So we're going to talk about our expectations for Magic players heading into next season. I think we'll talk players. We'll talk maybe a little Jamahl Mosley. I don't know that, there's really anything that we'll expect out of the front office during the regular season other than, maybe a small tweak here or there as we get closer to the trade deadline. And then we can just sort of talk about like what our expectations are for the entire team. But let's go ahead and let's start it off fun, Kevin. What are your expectations for Paolo Banchero heading into year 3, winning Rookie of the Year his first season, becoming an all-star last year, being just an incredible playoff riser in that first-round playoff series last year against the Cavs, and last year averaged 22.6 points, almost 7 rebounds, almost 5.5 assists, just short of a steal per game, shot 45% from the floor, almost 34% from behind the arc, and shot 72% from the free throw line.
I think, Jonathan, for me, the I don't know if expectation is the right word. It's a mixture of expectation and like hope for Paolo this year. Is more abstract. For me, it's more like I think this could be the year that the NBA finally wakes up when it comes to Paolo. Right? We're 2 years into this. The fact that he was the most disrespected and dishonored and unrecognized number 1 overall pick / Rookie of the Year in his first year was ridiculous, right? We went through that last year, doing amazing things as a second-year player, making an all-star team. Again, just so unheralded, so unrecognized. Makes the playoffs in his second year, takes a team to the playoffs in his second year, leads a team to the playoffs in his second year, 47 wins, takes Cleveland to 7 games. That was the start of, I think, the NBA universe recognizing, like the casuals out there. We talk about this all the time. Casuals don't watch the Magic, in part because the Magic aren't on national TV, right? It sucks, but it is what it is. Casuals watched some of that series, not all, because most of it was on NBA TV, but they watched some of it. And I think some of them started to realize, like, oh, Paolo, like, hold up. That guy's good. And so I think that was the start of something that I hope continues this season. I hope / expect. I think it's bound to happen that the rest of the NBA world starts to realize Paolo is the real deal. Like, going to be one of the best players in the league in very short order. And therefore, I think maybe the Magic in turn are going to get some recognition that they deserve last season at least.
In the playoffs, in 7 games, Paolo averaged 27 points, 8.6 rebounds, 4 assists, just over a steal per game, shot 45% from the floor, 40% from behind the arc, 75% from the free throw line. I'm going to make a bold prediction. I think Paolo's stat line this regular season looks closer to his playoff averages than his regular season averages from last year. I fully expect Paolo Banchero to make his second All-Star team. And this year, where he was like on the fringes of the All-NBA conversation, I think he will find himself squarely in the All-NBA conversations this year. I think, just like you, I think this is the year that Paolo, like, we've seen him taking these steps, but these step in the eyes of the national media, where they go, why have we not been watching this guy for the past 2 years? I think he just takes another step up. At this point, he's been in the gym literally the entire offseason. Every day he's posting some kind of workout clip or workout photo. I think Paolo Banchero takes the step to like fringe. I already think he's like you said, unheralded star. I think this year he becomes like fringe superstar level.
And I just need to remind everybody, Paolo will still be 21 when this season tips off. Like, just sit in that for a moment. All those things Jonathan just listed off, still 21. Will be 21 until November. 21. That's the part that's still just like, I can't get my brain around it. It just blows my mind when I think about it. It's so cool. It's amazing.
Okay, let's talk about Franz. Last year, averaged 19.7 points per game, 5.3 rebounds, 3.7 assists, just over a steal, shot 48% from the floor, 28% from behind the arc. In the playoffs, averaged almost 19 a game, almost 7 rebounds, 4.4 assists, shot 40% from the floor, 26.5% from behind the arc. So as bad as the shooting was in the regular season, it was even a little bit worse in the playoffs. Kevin, what do you expect out of Franz Wagner this year?
Man, I know we just talked about it. I mean, the coin flip for me is the shooting, right? Like, I fully expect him to be better. Just continue his progress and everything else, right? I still think he's going to be a better playmaker. He's going to be a better finisher at the rim, better defender. I think Franz is a very underrated defender. The shooting thing, man. I know we just talked about it. I don't know. I'm going to choose to not put an expectation on the shooting just because I can't go there yet. I can't bring myself there, but I do expect him to take another leap. I think him and Paolo together, I think also take another leap. You know, they had year one to figure things out. Year two, again, outside of Franz's shooting, they really started to figure things out. And I think, again, year three is where they can take a whole different leap. Again, it also kind of ties into the Paolo thing where once people start recognizing Paolo, recognizing this whole Magic team and this core, in turn, they're going to recognize Franz. And I think part of me is rooting for I almost said the Magic. Part of me is rooting for Germany and the United States to play each other in the Olympics because I really want Franz to ball out in that environment. I think he can do it. I think it'd be really cool, again, for casual basketball fans to see him like take it to the United States if he's able to do that. But yeah, I think Franz takes another step, no doubt. The shooting, again, I'm choosing not to answer that because I think my brain says one thing and my heart says another. So that's what I think about Franz.
So the shooting is absolutely the X factor when it comes to Franz. I think for sure, I don't think this is a bold prediction, but averaging 19.7 points per game last year, I think this year we see two Magic players score over 20 points per game for the first time since Shaq and Penny. Like,
I think it's a no doubt.
I think we finally break that long, painful streak. Everything that you said with Franz, totally agree. The 3-point shooting is the big question mark. If it is good, right? Like, I think he'll be closer to, maybe 25 points per game than he will be 20 points per game. If the shooting again comes back to where we saw it the first couple of years, this is a guy who's going to find himself in the conversation for the All-Star game. If Paolo plays the way that I'm expecting him to, and if all the other aspects of Franz's game is where we expect them to be, and if the shooting can come back to a reasonable level, I think the Magic's record will be good enough that it'll dictate the conversation of like, hey, do they deserve two All-Stars? Especially when you look at Franz's play on both ends of the floor and the impact that he makes on both ends of the floor.
Can I just derail this for 1 second? Sorry.
Please do.
Did we talk about Vegas releasing the line?
You're a few steps ahead of me. I do we can just jump right into it.
Well, because I was going to tie it into this, but that's fine.
I was going to do that when we get into team expectations. Okay. We'll save it just for, give me a few more minutes.
That's fine.
All right. Next up, Jalen Suggs. Last year, 12.6 points per game. Shot 47% from the floor, almost 40% from behind the arc. Added 3.1 rebounds, 2.7 assists, almost a steal and a half per game. And in the playoffs, almost 15 points per game, shot 40% from the floor, just under 30% from behind the arc. Had 5 rebounds, 3.3 assists, and 1.3 steals per game. I'll start with Jalen. It looks like it is full steam ahead for Jalen, the point guard. That is, to me, like where we talk about the shooting with Franz, to me, the biggest question with Jalen this year is going to be how he can organize the offense. Because if he can't do that, it just puts so much pressure on Paolo, on Franz to do that possession in, possession out. Paolo Banchero at the start of the offseason talked about, like in terms of bringing somebody else in, he doesn't really want to be the guy that necessarily does everything and sets the table on offense. So he would have liked to see somebody brought in to take over that role, but it looks like the Magic are confident with Jalen Suggs being in that role. Apart from that, I want to see the self-creation stuff a little bit more. We saw that in flashes last year, in terms of getting to his spots and knocking down mid-range jumpers or getting downhill and getting all the way to the rim. I felt like, especially during the win streak, like the Magic's offense got off to its best starts when Jalen Suggs was being aggressive and Jalen Suggs was getting to the rim, because it felt like it just took the pressure off of Paolo and Franz and just opened up the offense for everyone. So for me, that's what I'm going to be looking for. And my expectation is that like Jalen at least makes an attempt to cement himself as like the true third star on this team, not only in terms of defensively, but also like the offensive impact on the game. Like for Jalen to be that guy, I think he probably has to be closer to like 15 per game. Like if we're talking about, Jalen Suggs is the third guy for the next, 7-8 years alongside Paolo and Franz, he probably needs to be closer to 15 points a game rather than the 12.6 points per game he was at this year. So I really want to see just like a step up for Jalen overall offensively. The 3-point percentage, you can't really ask it to be much better than what it is now. Even if that takes a little bit of a hit and he's 37, 38% this year, I think that is good enough as long as we see improvements in the ball handling, the offensive organization, the self-shot creation, and just a little bit more volume there for Jalen.
The thing with Jalen, I know we just talked about him. I won't go over it too much more. We've just seen the growth year after year after year, 3 years in a row of consistent growth across his game, really. I mean, statistically, you could argue certain things, but just the eye test alone, I mean, Jalen has been a better basketball player year over year. And I don't see any reason for that to stop, right? Like, I mean, I don't see any reason for that to slow down. And so I think this absolutely could be a year. I know we're 3 players in a row talking about 3 guys taking big leaps and all that kind of stuff, but I just don't see a reason for it to slow down now. I think especially as Paolo gets better, as Franz gets better, in theory, it should open up more opportunities for Jalen, like you talked about, to be a not just, distributor creator, but get his own shot in some ways, you mentioned it. That's definitely something I like to see more from him. I think he tried to do that in stretches in the playoffs, but unfortunately the Cavs are a terrible team to try to do that, to try to get to the rim and score. Jalen tried that several times, and unfortunately, it wasn't his best series at that. I'll put it that way. But yeah, I'd love to see him try it more. I think he's capable of it. And ultimately, again, I think he's proving and continue to prove that he was worth that number 5 overall pick, that Jeff Weltman and company knew what they were doing. And I think it's another good year coming for Jalen.
Yeah, 3 straight guys where we expect him to make big steps. Sure, some of that is our homer bias, but everybody that believes in the core of this team realizes that this team is going to go as Paolo, Franz, and Jalen Suggs do. So as we all expect this team to take another step forward, it's going to come off the backs of those guys. So I don't think it's crazy to think that each of those guys can take significant steps forward, because if we think this team is going to be the team that we all believe it can, those guys are going to continue to take steps forward. Next, Wendell Carter Jr., last year, 11 points per game, 6.9 rebounds, 1.7 assists, shot 52% from the floor, 37% from behind the arc, which I believe was a career high, if I'm not mistaken, shot just under 70% from the free throw line. I don't expect Wendell to take a huge step forward offensively, just because I don't know that the opportunity is going to be there. But I do think that we see Wendell sort of come back to the mean. I know last year the injury, and it seems like he was dealing with that throughout the year, didn't really look exactly quite like the same player. But I think we do see just an increase in terms of like his efficiency, finishing around the rim, struggled with that at times last year. And I think we see more of that like defensive presence from Wendell come back this year.
Yeah, career low in rebounding last season, rebounds per game, rebounds per 36 minutes, everywhere you want to slice it, career low. Same thing with blocks per game. Those 2 things, especially when you think about the team that is around him, how this team is constructed, the rebounding has got to be better. I know as a whole, the Magic weren't a horrible rebounding team, but there's just something about the optics of having a center that averaged less than 7 rebounds a game last season. I think it was less than 7. Yeah, less than 7 rebounds a game last season, 6.9. Like, it's just got to be better, especially because we know he is better, right? Like, we've seen that, the 3 seasons before, 2.5 seasons before that, 8.8 rebounds, 10.5 rebounds, 8.7 rebounds come before last season. So, yeah, rebounds got to be better. I think that's the biggest thing. Offensively, we're never going to ask a center to do a lot because of what else is on the floor. And so I think if he can continue to shoot the ball well, again, like you said, career high, 37.4% from 3 last season. Keep that up. Keep stretching the floor. find ways to get more rebounds. And yeah, I think Wendell, talking about expectations, I expect a bounce back season from Wendell. I don't think it's going to be huge. I don't think it's going to be, earth shattering, but again, I think maybe back to the mean, like you said, is a really good way to put it.
Next up, what about Cole Anthony? 11.6 points per game last year. Cole played in 81 games.
Wow.
More than anyone on the Magic last year. He, again, 11.6 points, but 3.8 rebounds, 2.9 assists per game, shot 43% from the floor, 33% from behind the arc, shot 82% from the free throw line. Cole Anthony's, I think, potentially his role is going to be a little bit different this year. I think we're going to see the ball in Anthony Black's hands a good bit, just because out of the two guys that I would want playing off the ball, probably be more so Cole Anthony this year. But I think he has another opportunity. Like, Cole Anthony didn't have an incredible year last year. I think, he was inconsistent at times. I think that would be fair to say. He didn't quite get to the level that we saw in the second half of the prior season. But if he can get close to that level, that's a guy that, especially if he plays 81 games again, that's a guy who we're talking about potentially being in like that 6th man of the year type of category, especially if the bench unit can get anywhere near the levels that they got to last year, where for the first half of the season at least, they're one of, if not the very best bench unit in the league. So I don't think a ton is going to change from Cole Anthony. I'm hoping for a little bit more of an efficient year from behind the arc. But just another year older, another year wiser, a little bit more savvy. Cole Anthony, we know that he's going to make the effort defensively. He's going to be, somewhat limited there just by, his physical tools. But, a little bit better decision making and a little bit more efficient shooting from behind the arc is what I'd like to see from Cole this year.
I think we so often forget that Cole started last season so well. Like right after he signed the extension, we were all like, oh my goodness, what a steal. That extension. I mean, he started so well and then just kind of fell off, And so I don't have an explanation for that. I know Cole mentioned sometimes this season that he was struggling, potentially off the court. We don't know any specifics on that. But obviously hope first and foremost for him as a person that, he's doing okay. And maybe this season is better for him personally. But when it comes to on the court stuff, yeah, I just want to see him, start as he started the season, maybe continue more of that across the season. The thing with Cole, he's always going to be streaky, right? In part because of his role, in part because of, his skill set as a player, his size, like all those things factor into it. It's streaky, right? I don't ever expect Cole to be a consistent, high performer. And again, it's not a knock on Cole. It's in large part due to his role. But if he can have more of those really good games off the bench, I think that could be really big. And you're right. I think the Anthony Black thing is super interesting. Again, AB, Gary Harris, Cole Anthony, all vying for those backup guard minutes in addition to maybe a couple other guys. So, yeah, I think Cole, first off, kudos to him. We've talked about this before, embracing the 6-man role. I know it wasn't what he wanted to do initially. He talked about he believes he's a starter in this league. But it feels to me that he has fully embraced the good of the team and that this role is something for that. So I hope he continues that. And yeah, I think he's got the skill set to still be a spark plug off the bench. And I think we'll see that this season.
Moving on to Mo Wagner last year, again, a guy that played 80 games, started one, averaged 10.9 points per game, 4.3 rebounds, 1.2 assists, shot 60% from the floor, was hyper efficient at the rim, and shot 33% from behind the arc last year. Kevin, what do you expect out of good old big brother Mo Wagner?
I expect Mo to be Mo, baby. I mean, just keep being Mo. There's
Mo of the same.
Yes, Mo of the same from Mo. I think it's great. I'm trying to remember I'm looking up. I don't remember the game he started. Okay, he started, the Denver game. Of course, the Denver game. And we had 8 players or whatever it was on the road. He started that game. That's crazy. Anyway.
That was the game, I think, like the illness was going through the team. Yeah. Anthony Black maybe, like, was that the game that he started and then, like, just didn't have it and came out?
Yeah. Maybe probably my favorite game of the season last year, excluding the playoffs, man. That game was crazy. Anyway, Mo, yeah, I just want Mo to be Mo. I expect Mo to be Mo. Mo knows his role. Mo knows what he's good at. Mo knows what he's not good at. Maybe I would say I expect more techs this year from Mo. Maybe had a little bit of dip in those last season, so he needs to get those back up. But no, I really don't have a lot to say with Mo. Again, he knows his role. He knows what he's good at, and he kind of plays into that. And I'm unashamedly a huge Mo Wagner fan. And so yeah, let's get more Mo this season. Mo.
Next up, Gary Harris. Last year started 27 games, played in 54 of them when he came back, mostly coming off of the bench. 6.9 points per game last year, 1.7 rebound, 1.6 assists, shot 44% from the floor and 37% from behind the arc. Now coming back on a much smaller deal, basically sounds like it's a 1-and-1 kind of deal. His days as the starting shooting guard are over with Kentavious Caldwell-Pope being here. What do you expect out of Gary Harris? Like, are you convinced that he's in the rotation from day one? Do you think there's any chance that a guy like Jet Howard or Tristan Da Silva sort of sneaks in there? What are your thoughts?
I think Gary might be the biggest mystery on this whole team this season, if you ask me. Just because, like you said, I have absolutely no idea what his role is going to be. I have no idea. Like, on paper, I would expect him to be the backup two guard. Like, on paper, he's right behind KCP. However, at some point, you have to talk about Jet Howard, right? Like, I think you just have to. And so is this the year? It's hard because, again, he was a number 11 overall pick just last year. At some point, you have to play him. Is this the season they do that? Do they hold off on another year? It would be hard to see that happening. But it's also hard for me to picture Gary Harris being a third string two guard. Like, that feels weird to me too. On the other hand, statistically last season, in some ways, Gary might have been a third string two guard. Talking about that he's out. In some ways, I still think Gary Harris defensively, borderline elite. I think he is a terrific defender. Very important for this team. But offensively, he's just out there to make threes. And he really had a hard time doing that last year. Really let us down. Regular season, playoffs. Expectations, man. This is the toughest one for me. I think he starts the season as the backup two guard. But I would not be surprised if by the end of the season, he's third string. That's more of a prediction than an expectation, but I'm going to roll with that.
I would say, out of anyone on the team, if we're talking about mid-season trade candidates, to me, Gary Harris is the prime candidate.
Yeah, that's good.
The hope for me is that some point during this year, Jet Howard forces the organization's hand into making that change. Now, is Jet Howard going to give you what Gary Harris does defensively? Absolutely not. But I think he gives you probably a bit more shooting right now. I think it's fair to say Jet Howard is probably the better shooter. He also gives you some stuff off the dribble that Gary doesn't really have. He gives you a little bit of playmaking, more so than I think what Gary Harris has. And I think you just have so much defense up and down the lineup. I think you can survive with going from Gary Harris to Jet Howard. I don't think it's the end of the world. I think the personnel is still good enough to be a top defensive team in the league, like top 5 at worst with the personnel that we have in place. So I don't know if that's my expectation. I am expecting Gary Harris to start at the beginning of the year. And depending how the season goes, they may just, like, if Gary Harris is shooting, 41% from 3 again, I'm not going to be mad if they don't decide to move that guy at the deadline.
And 31% in the playoffs on a lot of wide. I know it's a smaller sample size, but a lot of wide open triples.
Yeah, he was stinky in the playoffs, but in what was so bad about that is he was the guy that you were sort of depending on, like, hey, you actually have to make shots here to help the other guys get some confidence back.
Yeah.
You're the guy that's been here before.
Had to,
right? Like, it makes sense that, Jalen Suggs shoots sub 30% from behind the arc in his first ever playoff series. But yeah, Gary Harris, I definitely think is a tough one. Next up, Jonathan Isaac. Last year, played in 58 games, started in 2, One of those was like he kind of started, but averaged 6.8 points per game, 4.5 rebounds per game, 1.2 blocks, shot 51% from the floor, 37% from behind the arc, 72% from the free throw line. What are your expectations for J.I.? This is another one that I think is tough.
It is tough. It's super tough because obviously no one needs me to recap Jonathan Isaac's career, but it's been so unorthodox. There's been zero opportunity for like consistent growth, right? I mean, it's just been on and off and on and off and start and stop and start and stop. And so in a normal NBA trajectory, using a Jalen Suggs, for example, who's a prime example of this, first season, second season better, third season even better, right? With Jonathan Isaac, there's just been no opportunity for that over almost his whole career now, especially obviously the last 5 years, whatever it's been. And so there's not necessarily like a track record we can go back and look at when it comes to growth. There's a different track record we can look at. But for the most part, once he got back this season, he was back, which is amazing, right? The fact that he ended up playing 58 plus 7, 65 games this season in total, when you include playoffs, that's the number we wanted. We wanted 60 games out of JI this season. We got 60 games. So first expectation, I think he's healthy again. And he's healthy from the start, which means, does he play 70 games this year, right? I'm going to put that as the expectation on Jonathan Isaac. I expect him to play 70 games this year, which is crazy. That's crazy. But the fact that he will have been healthy for almost a full calendar year means that I think the restrictions are going to come off. I think he's going to start playing back-to-backs. And so that number is going to go up. I think they're going to take the bubble wrap off. They slowly took it off this season. I think it comes off this year. So if I'm going to pick one expectation, it's going to be he plays 70 games. Outside of that, what?
70 is a lot.
70 is a lot. I know. It is a lot. That's what I'm saying though. He played 58 this year. 58, and he was out for the first, whatever that was. I don't even have the game log in front of me. Out for the first month or whatever it was. Month and a half. So I think 70, not month and a half. That's not true.
No,
whatever it was.
He was there opening night. It was just more
Yes.
so like, I think there was like a sore hamstring at one point, and then obviously like wasn't playing second night of back-to-backs, third game in 4 nights.
Right.
That kind of stuff. But
Right.
it felt like at most points he was in the lineup. And I mean, he played almost 60 games. So.
December is the stretch I'm thinking of where he missed, I don't know how many that is, 10 games in a row.
I think
whatever it was.
Maybe an ankle or something.
Right.
I forget exactly what it was.
But I'm saying if you take that stretch, that's the stretch I'm thinking of. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 games. He missed 10 games with that ankle, whatever it was. If he can avoid any kind of, little knock like that this season, I think 70 is in the realm of possibility. I really do. And so that's what I'm saying, because I think the bubble wrap's coming off. 70 games. And with that, I don't expect Jonathan Isaac to take any kind of leap. I at this point, anything above what we saw last year, I would be thrilled with. But I think it might just be Jonathan Isaac is an elite role player. And I'm okay with that at this point. Like, yeah, without all the injuries, could Jonathan Isaac have been a lot more? I absolutely think so. But I think he's got a role. He's going to come off the bench. He's going to be that backup, basically big, 4 or 5, whatever. And I say, let's embrace it. Let's see what he can do. Not a ton of minutes, but again, I think J.I. is who he is, and I'm excited to see it for a full healthy season.
My expectation is not so much about the amount of games that he plays, but more so about the minutes he plays each game. So last year, he averaged 15.8 minutes per game in 58 games. He played a total in the regular season of 914 minutes. I expect and I hope that we see that increase closer to 20 minutes per game this year. And I do think that we see him in more games this year. Even if he's health is relatively the same, but if he's able to play in back-to-backs 3 games in 4 nights, there's not like the injury management kind of stuff going on. If we get 65 games out of Jonathan Isaac at 20 minutes per game, that's 1,300 minutes, which would be 400 more minutes than we got last season, which if he was playing 40 minutes per game, like that's the equivalent of like 10 additional games of Jonathan Isaac just with the minutes alone. Like when you talk about his per minute impact, like per minute, he's one of the most impactful defenders in the entire NBA.
Yeah.
So you're telling me that we're going to get, at least 10 more games of Jonathan Isaac over the course of a season when we're talking about the amount of minutes that he plays. But if it's 400 minutes at 20 minutes, that would be an extra 20 games out of JI compared to what we got last year. That is such an improvement for that guy. Like that's what is that? Like a 30% improvement year over year. It would be so big to have JI on the floor for, 4 or 5 more minutes per game and get more games out of him. I'm right where you are. I don't think we see any kind of leap in terms of like his offensive efficiency. I think we're going to see an increase in his numbers, like just coming from the fact that he's going to play more games.
Right.
But if Jonathan Isaac plays 70 games this year, the Magic have the potential to have 3 guys make an all-defensive team. We're talking about KCP, Jalen Suggs, Jonathan Isaac. Right. If all of those guys are healthy and play, whatever the required amount of games is now, if they all meet that, they're all going to be in the conversation for all defense. They may not all make it, but they'll be in the conversation, and that is crazy. Yeah. We get 65 games of JI at 20 minutes per game. The Magic will be a top 3 team defensively again in the NBA.
Oh, no doubt. No doubt.
And honestly, I would probably bet they'd be number 1.
Number 1, yeah. I love what you said about the minutes. That's so good. I think you just point to the playoffs. He played 21 minutes per game in that Cleveland series. I think he can do it. I think he can do it over the course of the season. Again, it's a way different schedule in the regular season.
And he's having a full, healthy offseason for the first time, like, before we knew what COVID was.
Right, yeah, exactly. Yeah, so I think it's very possible. Again, I think we know what Jonathan Isaac is as a player. I don't expect that to change. But again, just availability, I think that's going to be huge.
Next up, Goga Bitadze last year played 62 games, started 33 of them, played 15.4 minutes per game, averaged 5 points, 4.6 rebounds, 1.3 assists. He shot 60% from the floor, 14% from behind the arc. What are your expectations for our boy Goga?
I expect Goga to solidify himself as the third string center on this team. Yeah, I don't know. It's hard because Goga is.
I think the season is going to Goga the same for Goga.
Well, I don't think so. That's the thing. That's what I'm getting at. Like the fairy tale, story, that the Cinderella story of him as the starting center with the great run that we had in the early part of the season. Like I think it was like the glass slipper thing. Like
and he became a pumpkin.
Yeah, something like that.
I might be wrong. I don't think I ever said that I bought into him as
that's what I'm
the
getting
starting
at.
center. So for us, I think the expectations are the same. Maybe for other people, the expectations will be shifted.
If you look there's a lot of people, especially towards the end of the season, that were just clamoring for Goga to start.
There are still people that say that.
That's what I'm saying. They're still there. And on the one hand, I agree that Goga gives you things that the other 2 centers do not. He is a shot blocker. The other 2 guys are not. He is a rebounder more so than the other 2 guys. Outside of that, we really saw it towards the end of the season. Goga struggled. I do not see a world in which he starts. Like this conversation about trading Wendell so Goga can start. I just can't. I can't go there mentally. I would love to be wrong. I think Goga is a hilarious character. I don't want to diminish who he is as a person, but I think he's a funny guy. I think he's easygoing. Everybody loves him. I love the Cole and Goga combo. Those 2 have become apparently BFFs. All that's great. I just can't. I refuse to buy him. Yeah. Okay. All right.
I just came up with that.
You
on the
all
spot.
have been listening to the 6-man show, and we will catch you guys next. No, just kidding. Yeah, I just can't buy it. I think Goga's great. I think he's great for the team, and I expect him to solidify himself as a third string center.
Yeah, I'm right there with you with Goga. This one's going to be interesting. Anthony Black, a man of controversy last season, appeared in 69 games. Nice. Started 33 of them. Played scored 4.6 minutes per game, 2 rebounds, 1.3 assists. Shot 46% from the floor, almost 40% from behind the arc. We think all of the moves that have been made around the guard situation this year, it seems like there was a purposeful path to open up minutes for Anfernee Black.
I wonder how much of that is true, Jonathan, and how much of that is, I don't know if wishful thinking is the right
The
word.
fact that Tyus Jones signed a minimum in Phoenix tells me everything that I need to know.
That you want to know. Again,
okay, I would love to hear what you expect, because I don't think it's going to make me very happy.
You know where I am, and I know where you are. We want Anfernee Black to play. Both of us. I want everyone to hear that. I want him to play.
Correct.
But why all of a sudden would the front office be like, oh, now was it really Markelle? Did they feel like they were so obligated to play Markelle last year that they didn't
the dude
put
was
Anfernee
making
Black?
what, $15 million?
I understand. And maybe that really is it. I hope that's it. I hope Markelle was the lid for Anfernee Black, and now the gates are open and Anfernee Black can play. I hope that is true.
He was the 6th pick in the draft. Like, you gotta get him out there.
I want him to. I don't want to say more than anything, but I really want him to. I just hope that everything you just said is true. This front office, you just never know. You can never read them. I hope everything you said is true. Okay. I'm going to go off the assumption that it is. All right. Let's say it is. Let's say Anfernee Black. Let's say they move on from Markelle. They didn't sign Tyus Jones, didn't sign whoever you want to say. And now we're here with Anfernee Black. The issue still is Cole Anthony to me, right? If you go back to the 2-guard situation with Gary Harris, you and I both said we believe Gary Harris is the backup 2-guard, at least to start the season.
I don't believe that. I believe he's a wing. I believe he's the 3.
Okay, so you're saying he backs up Franz.
I don't know so much that that he backs up Franz, but
right.
I just think I think he's good enough to guard a lot of wings.
Sure.
I think you have enough size, and you still have Anfernee Black, who has more size than Gary Harris.
So this is a good conversation.
In the same realm defensively. I do think you can play those 3 guys in the same lineup.
That's okay. Thank you. That's what I was going to say. So you can picture a AB Cole Anthony Gary Harris trio.
Yes, correct.
Okay.
That's what I expect to see first game of the season. Could be wrong.
See. I got you. Okay. Here's again.
If you disagree with that, I would love to hear.
I don't disagree. I can picture opening night. It's Cole Anthony.
Is this trauma speaking, or is this?
It is. That's exactly what it is. It's not what I want. It's what I can picture. That's where I go mentally, because we just saw the whole second half of last season, Anfernee Black not play, and I'm just so scarred from that I can see them trotting out Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and Tristan da Silva.
I would lose my not to take anything away from Tristan da Silva. Yeah, but this year there shouldn't be any politicking for that to happen.
You could have argued that last year. I argued that last year. Again, this is not what I want. I hope everyone at home is listening and seeing this. This is not what I want. I'm scared of that. That's what I'm scared of. Okay. Expectation wise, again, let's go on the assumption that all this is true. Let's say Anfernee Black is the backup point guard for this team. Let's see what happens. I expect this to be more of a rookie year part 2, right? Because Anfernee Black got a taste of a rookie season in the first half of the year, and then was unable to do that the second half of the year for what everyone believes is no fault of his own. And so I expect a lot of mistakes. Maybe I know I use the term streaky for Cole, but a different type of streaky, right? I think he'll have good games. I think he'll have some games where he's terrible, and maybe he only plays 8 to 10 minutes, and other guys, because we do have a lot of other capable guys off the bench, end up scooting in there in the second half or something like that. I don't know. I can see that kind of stuff happening. Ultimately, I just hope, again, this is not an expectation, it's a hope. I hope he's the backup point guard ultimately.
Well, my expectation is that he will be. And I'm so happy that you said rookie year 2.0, because I do think this year he should be looked at essentially as a rookie. Not only was his playing time inconsistent, but he just didn't really have a defined role. He was just out there sort of floating around, in the minutes that he was given. So my expectation is that, hey, we need to treat him as a rookie. And as long as his play isn't just completely cratering the team, I think he deserves and needs to be able to play through those mistakes. So I would hate to see him have a bad, first half and then is just like completely pulled, in the, late in the fourth quarter for like multiple games in a row. I think that would be really unfortunate. I think with the amount of draft capital that they have invested into Anthony Black, you have to let him learn and play through his mistakes. But I think this is mostly going to be a rookie year for Anthony Black.
I'll say, sorry, just to add on that, I hesitate to say this. The leash that Markelle got.
Oh my gosh! Yeah,
last year.
Yeah,
like Anthony Black deserves that. That's what I'll say.
I would agree.
We've talked about it on the show. We love Markelle. I hope he has an amazing season wherever he ends up. I'll be rooting for him unless he goes to Miami, which I think Miami's roster is full, so he can't go there. If he goes almost anywhere else, I'll be rooting for him dearly. But he got such a long leash last year. They also owe that to Anthony Black. That's all I got to say.
Next up, Caleb Houston. Last year appeared in 59 games, started 13 of them, played 13.8 minutes, had 4.3 points per game, 1.4 rebounds, shot 38% from the floor, 37% from behind the arc. What do you expect out of Caleb Houston?
Can you start with Caleb this time?
I expect Caleb to be like a break glass in case of an emergency type of player who is capable of coming in and giving you spot minutes as long as he is knocking down threes. I don't expect Caleb Houston to be in the rotation. I expect him to be the 14th man on this roster, just above Corey Joseph.
Yeah, that's where I am. Again, a guy got a leash last year. It's hard because statistically, again, if we just talk about Caleb as a shooter, which as far as I'm concerned, that's what he is. He's just a shooter. He did get better last season. It was 33 to 37. Could we see another jump, another 3-point jump? Literally, 3-point and 3 percentage points. Can he hit 40% this year? Maybe. I just don't know if he's going to get the opportunity, the consistent opportunity to do that. So I'm with you. It's for some, I don't want to say for some reason. Again, I think Caleb has a lot of potential, and I've been a big Caleb fan, an advocate. He played a lot. Caleb. He played a lot last season when I didn't think he would. And so.
Or should.
Maybe should, yes. It does. Are there moments this season where that could happen? I didn't think it was possible last year and it happened. So maybe, but in my mind, I'm with you. I think I expect him to be, the next to last guy on the roster.
All right, before we get to the new additions of the roster, what are your expectations for Jett Howard? Last year appeared in 18 games. There was not a significant, meaningful minute in those 18 games. He averaged 3.7 minutes, averaged 1.6 points per game. He shot 33% from the floor, 28% from behind the arc. I think you can literally forget everything that you saw out of Jett Howard last year in a Orlando Magic uniform. You should focus more on what you more on. Yeah, exactly. More on what you saw from him out of the G League last year. I don't know what my expectation is for Jett Howard other than at some point this year, he is going to get an opportunity.
Yeah.
And he just has to take the most of it.
Yeah. I kind of mentioned it when I talked about the Gary thing. I think Gary begins the season in that backup role, and then by the end of the season, at some point, I think Jett Howard takes it. It's hard. I don't know if I'd like to think he doesn't spend any time in I almost said Lakeland, any time in Osceola, right? Like, there's no way they send the 11th overall pick down to Osceola in this second season, right? Like, what do you think?
I will be irate if he spends even one game in Osceola. Okay. I think it would be completely ridiculous.
That's how I, maybe not irate, but I would be shocked. Okay, so I think that era is gone for Jett. So
put that Jett Howard Osceola jersey in the rafters.
Yeah, hang it up. I think I've kind of given that. I think at some point he earns that spot, and then I hope he's just a spark plug off the bench.
He just looked so good in Summer League, and I know it's Summer League, but you just have to give him the opportunity to go out there and do that and show you that he's capable of doing that at the NBA level. And like, if he fails, it'll be no one's fault but his own, but you have to give him the opportunity.
And think about the few opportunities that he did get. Think about this, like the situation of all of those. Like they were all that I can think of garbage time.
No, I went back. He literally did not receive a single minute that was meaningful. Every single second of his came in garbage time.
Right. So he's in garbage time moments with a garbage time team around him. Like you're
either up 20 or down 20. Like,
got to get a chance with the good guys on the team. Like put him in there with the good players and see what kind of looks and opportunities he gets, and then what he does with them. I think we can be really pleasantly surprised with Jeff.
I think that if he can figure it out defensively, which he wasn't awful in Summer League, but that not being awful defensively in Summer League is not a compliment. Like, there's not a ton of dynamic offense happening in Summer League. But if he can be good enough on that end so that he doesn't, like, he's not getting just like switched on to possession after possession. Like, he's a guy that at 6'8" should not be picked on defensively the way that Cole Anthony is, who is, listed at 6'2". I don't even think he's that tall, right?
Especially with the haircut.
Right. So if he's good enough defensively, like if Gary catches a cold, his like rotation spot might be gone. If Jed Howard is able to do what, like, even to a certain extent, what he was able to do in the G League last year and in Summer League this year. Next up, a guy who I didn't realize had the same birthday as Cole Anthony. They're separated by 1 year. Cole Anthony is 1 year older than Tristan da Silva, the rookie out of Colorado.
Now, sorry, Jonathan, I got to interrupt. You're going to do this to our guy. You said we're moving on to the new guys. What about Trevelin Queen?
Come on, man.
Come on, Jonathan.
I expect Trevelin Queen to be the 2A guy that he was. No, I don't. I don't mean to disrespect Trevelin Queen. I really thought that we were talking about like the guy, like the main roster guys.
Unbelievable.
I expect the same out of Trevelin Queen.
Trevelin Queen, I see you, bro. But yes, 2A guy. Yep. Okay, now we can talk about Tristan.
Go ahead, please do. Now that you've blown up my spot, no, the floor is all yours.
Well,
I am muting my mic.
I got to show respect to TQ. Tristan da Silva. Coming into the draft, I thought we were going to draft and stash. I mentioned that on this show, just like we did last year. I felt like the Jet Howard thing was kind of how we were starting to handle draft picks, especially as this team gets better. We have a lower need for, draft picks to come in and contribute right away. And then we drafted Tristan da Silva, who is maybe one of the most NBA ready guys as far as his skill set. Not that he's elite, but is able to, on paper at least, contribute right away. And it had me second guessing everything, especially when I look at this roster. You talked about Gary potentially being a backup wing. I could see it. It's a coin flip for me. He is still 6'4". Like, even though he's a great defender, he is still 6'4". Tristan da Silva 6'8". Is he a guy that can back up Franz Wagner in year one? I don't know, but I think the front office is going to at least take a look at it because he has the size, he has the shooting. I think he has a lot of skill set that is very similar to Franz in some ways. All that being said, I have to make an expectation. I think he probably is like the 11th man on the roster. I think he's just on the outside looking in. But I think going into next season, I think he could absolutely solidify himself as the backup to Franz. But I think for now, that's where I'll put him.
I think, and this is going to be another bold prediction, I think there is I wouldn't say it's incredibly likely. I would put it at maybe like a 20% chance that come the trade deadline, Jeff and Anthony Parker look at this team and they're like, this is pretty close to like our vision of this team. But what would really make it be the vision of this team is to start or off the bench to be 6'7" Anthony Black, 6'8" Jed Howard, 6'8" Tristan da Silva, 6'10" Jonathan Isaac, or he's really a 7-footer, and then 6'11" Mo Wagner.
Yep.
I could see a world where they go, Tristan da Silva is too good to keep on the bench or to send to Osceola. Jet Howard, we spent the 11th pick in the draft on this guy. We have to give him a real chance. And I could see a world where at the trade deadline they decide to move on from Cole Anthony and Gary Harris and give like that young trio of Anthony Black, Jet Howard, Tristan da Silva the keys to the bench unit. Tristan da Silva and Jet Howard were both, I know we're not supposed to overreact to Summer League, but I can't help it. Like the two of those guys just looked so incredibly good at Summer League. I just feels like at some point you have to give those guys a chance. So, maybe it's not this season, but I think if you had me bet by the start of like next season, if Anthony Black, Jet Howard, and Tristan da Silva aren't all squarely in the rotation, to me that is a draft failure by this front office. And for that to happen, I think Cole Anthony would need to be moved.
Yeah, you kind of answered my question I was about to ask. I can 100% see a world where you're exactly right as far as that deal being done or something similar to it. But this is expectations, you know? So I'm curious, like, okay. would you say,
no.
Yeah, that's what I'm wondering.
Expectation is that from day one, Jet Howard and Tristan da Silva are on the outside looking in, but like they're making Cole Anthony, Gary Harris, and Anthony Black's lives hell in practice every day. Like as close as you can get to being in the rotation without being in the rotation. Right. Like, I just think this is a really deep Magic team. I think that is a strength more than it, could potentially be a weakness because all of the high quality character guys that we have on this team. But I would be surprised if either Tristan da Silva or Jet Howard were in the rotation from day one. And last but not least, Corey Joseph. I see him as a break glass in case of emergency, third point guard. If Anthony Black, Cole Anthony, or Jalen Suggs goes down, then we see Corey Joseph, for a couple of games for 12 to 15 minutes per game. I don't see anything else outside of that.
I see Corey Joseph as a great veteran leader from the bench, not off the bench, from the bench. That's where I see Corey Joseph. Again, maybe garbage time, maybe there's injuries. Outside of that, a good veteran presence from the bench.
All right, I know we're going to talk about the Magic team, and we're going a bit longer than we had planned here on the pod. But
I'm sorry, I have to interrupt again.
Please.
Did we talk about KCP?
Oh my gosh, we didn't talk about Kentavious Caldwell-Pope. Yeah, I dropped the ball. I dropped the bag of beans on that one.
I can't let us move on. Sorry.
Correct. No, that is a glaring omission on my part.
This is real.
No,
this is about KCP.
That is totally fair. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, and I mean we talked about him earlier about him being older than me at least. But Kentavious Caldwell-Pope last year played and started in 76 games for the Denver Nuggets, scored 10.1 points per game. Threw in 2.4 rebounds, 2.4 assists, 1.3 steals, shot 46% from the floor, and just over 40% from behind the arc, almost 90% from the free throw line. Kentavious Caldwell-Pope is going to start every single game that he plays as the Magic 2 guard. He's going to be right there with Jalen Suggs in terms of the two best perimeter defenders on the team. Both of those guys are going to be in the conversation for all defensive team, potentially. I do think Jalen Suggs has the potential to be in the Defensive Player of the Year conversation, especially if the Magic have one of the best defensive units in the league like they did last year. And I just think Kentavious Caldwell-Pope continues to give you high-level perimeter defense, needs to shoot above 40% from behind the arc because he's been doing that 3 out of the last 4 seasons. And I think he's just going to be awesome. And I think Magic fans are going to love him really quickly. And I think this is not meant to be an insult, but I think he's going to be what we hoped Gary Harris would be.
Absolutely. Yeah, that's basically what I was going to say about Gary. I don't want to say I expect him to be the missing piece because that makes it sound like we're one piece away from a title, and KCP, or some people call him Kenny, is going to make us.
Who the heck calls him Kenny?
That's what
I have not heard that. I promise.
Yeah. No,
I missed that.
Yeah, no.
All right,
the Denver
Kenny.
people called him Kenny. I don't know if that's everyone can call him Kenny, But like his teammates in Denver, some of them called him Kenny. Like I don't know how close you got to be to KCP to call him Kenny. I'm not going to call him Kenny. Like when we see him on media day, I'm not doing that.
It's not listed under his nicknames on Basketball Reference.
I've seen it.
I'm not saying you're wrong, but if it's not on Basketball Reference, I wouldn't feel comfortable saying it.
That's
it
what I'm
says
saying.
KC Ken or KCP.
Right. So
why not Kent?
You can call him that. If you want to call him that to his face on media day, go for it.
Nope.
Going back to this. Again, I'm not saying he's the missing piece as in he's the piece that we were missing to win a title, but there is a good chance that he is the missing piece to like take us to a different level, which is going to contradict what I'm going to talk about when we get to team expectations. So hold that in your mind.
Lord.
Hold that in your mind. Hold that in your mind. However, I do think, especially come playoffs, I expect KCP to be a huge difference maker in the playoffs. I think regular season, he's going to slot in well. He's going to help his team out, all those things. I think in April and May
and June,
I think that's when, at least in year one, that's when we're going to see the biggest bang for your buck with KCP. That's my expectation.
Okay, let's move on to Jamahl Mosley before we talk about overall expectations. Year 4, Jamahl Mosley. I believe the last time that we talked, I think in our group chat, someone shared that he's the favorite or co-favorite to be coach of the year next year. Not that we have made excuses for Jamahl Mosley, in the first couple of years, although I do think that if you were making excuses for him where, in some areas he may not be perfect, I think it was fair to make excuses in terms of like, the roster and, may not be constructed the best way. If those excuses did exist, I feel like maybe now is the time where, it's like it's not put up or shut up time because he's been doing a great job. But I do think like the excuses won't really be there for him this year, right? Like if the team is struggling and it seems to be like a rotation or like a schematic issue, I feel like more of that will fall on his shoulders. Like for example, I know a criticism that I have had is that maybe like end of game offensive play calling isn't always the best. Now that doesn't necessarily have to be a strong suit for every coach, right? Like I think you can staff for stuff like that. Nate Tibbetts, after him leaving at the beginning of last year, I do think like the offense felt that to a certain extent last year. And unless I missed something, I don't think we've had like a big addition to the coaching staff. I don't know if that is going to happen at any point during this offseason. I think if there was like something on my wish list is that we would bring in like an experienced assistant coach that is like very offensive oriented to help with that. But the thing that I know about Jamahl Mosley is that this team is going to play its absolute heart out, night in, night out. You're very ever rarely going to have to ask, whether or not this team cares or if, they're going to play with effort. Focus is something that I think we could criticize this team of at points last year, especially down the stretch. But I think it's this team's and this coaching staff's job. And I know that they started this messaging at the end of last year, but just how important the regular season is and just how important every game is of the regular season. So I think my expectation for Jamahl Mosley in terms of like a motivator is that we should see a heightened level of focus from this team out of the gate day one. And overall, that should translate to more wins for this team this year.
Yeah, I like what you said about excuses. I think Jamahl Mosley definitely has had excuses before, especially in his first 2 seasons. Good grief. Year 3, fewer excuses, better results, right? I mean, it was the healthiest team he's had yet, and it showed on paper. Obviously, there's a lot more to that. Older Paolo, older Franz, all down the list, but healthy team, 47 wins. If the team is healthy this season, I think absolutely. I think I have no fears, no worries about that. If this team is healthy, I think the identity is in place. Thank you to Jamahl Mosley for that. The identity is in place. This team knows what it takes to be a good basketball team, to win games. And so, I expect him to do that. Again, if healthy, outside of that, I really don't have any expectations for Jamahl Mosley. I think he's built the backbone built the foundation, built the core for this team, and they are just out there implementing it. And I expect them to do that again this season if healthy.
Let's wrap it up with our expectations for the Magic team. So like you alluded to a little while ago, the Vegas, win total, betting odds have come out for every NBA team. According to FanDuel Sportsbook, the over or the win total mark for the Magic is 47.5 wins. So you could pick over, you can pick under. Last year, the Magic won 47 games. Kevin, what are your expectations for the Magic's record this year?
I want the record to show that it is July 31st for us as we're recording this. And I reserve the right to change this. And I probably will change this come September, October. But here's the thing.
Oh, great.
47 wins last year. Amazing. Great. That sets the bar really high. Really, really high for this team. While I wouldn't consider it a fluke, a lot went right last season to make it 47 wins. And I would argue a lot went right that I don't want to say this team wasn't 47 wins good if you ask me, but maybe. Okay. So here's where I'm going with my expectations right now. Don't you shake your head at me. Right now.
I'm coming back to us losing to Charlotte and Houston, and you're being like, this is who this team is. And I was like, no. And then we saw the last game, obviously Milwaukee, but then we saw them in Cleveland. We're going to disagree on this, but that is okay.
What did we see in Cleveland?
They went 7 games.
No, you said in Cleveland. You said
okay. I meant in the Cleveland series.
Yeah. Uh-huh.
They had an 18-point lead in Game 7 in the first half. We saw that in Cleveland.
Mm-hmm. And the second half notice came. I'm not going to argue against my team. What I'm going to say, my expectation for this team right now, as it sits, would be 48 wins. Okay, so I'm going the over.
I like it.
But this idea of this team jumping up to 55 wins, something like that, like a year better of Paolo, yes. A year better of Franz, yes. A year better of Jalen. Again, going down the line, adding KCP, all those things. However, so much happened in the Eastern Conference last year that helped this team. So much. On the one hand. On the other hand, this team, to their credit, beat the brakes off of every bad team in the league. It was great. It's exactly what good teams should do. And that was the year one of this team being a good team. Now, this year, the next step is being better against the good teams. Can this team do it? I think so. I think it's going to be a mixture. I think they're going to lose more games to bad teams, and I think they're going to win more games against good teams. That's what I think. My number right now is 48, so just barely better. But this idea that all these things adding up to be a 55-win Eastern Conference final team, I'm not there yet, but maybe by October I will be.
And I need them to be just a little bit better on the road.
Yeah,
this past year, they're 18-23. You would love to see them be at least a smidge above 500. If you're going to be a 55-win team, you're not going to be sub 500 on the road.
No.
Like it's just not going to happen. For me, where I'm at is probably like 49 to 50 wins. I think it's silly to look at a team that, yes, they don't have the element of surprise anymore, which I do think is overrated in the NBA. Like you come into March and a team is third or fourth in the East. Nobody's sneaking up on you, right? Yeah. At that point, like you've got 4 months of NBA basketball of the Magic being really good and beating some of the best teams in the league. I just don't believe in we're not sneaking up on anybody. Maybe over the course of the first few weeks of the season, sure. But once you get past the All-Star break, I just don't believe in the idea that we were sneaking up on teams. But adding Kentavious Caldwell-Pope, another year of Paolo, Franz, Jalen, adding Tristan da Silva, like even though that guy may not be in the rotation from day one, him just being in practice, going against these guys day in and day out, I think there's going to be just like a better, like cohesive fit with Markelle not being in the lineup. I do feel like that was forced at a lot of points last year. And we talked about it all last year that we thought Anthony Black was the better fit for this team. So I think there will be better fit just all across the board for this roster. And the fact that they have that taste of the playoffs, there's been all this messaging about how the regular season is so important and you have to take the game in December just as serious as the game in April, all that kind of stuff. I just don't really see a world where the Magic are not at least a couple of games better than they were last year. Sure, a lot of stuff like broke our way, but like a lot of stuff also didn't. Like you missed Franz Wagner for 10 games. Jonathan Isaac in and out of the lineup. Markelle Fultz and Wendell Carter Jr. missing a big chunk of time at the beginning of the year. Like it's not like it was a adversity-free season for the Orlando Magic. It certainly wasn't that. 55 games, I would be completely blown away. That would have been good for the 5th best record in the NBA last year. You would have been the 2nd seed in the Eastern Conference by 5 games. I just don't see that happening. I think 50 games is possible. I think maybe even 53 games is possible, but 55 wins, another 8-win improvement over the 13-win improvement that you had last year, and I think it was like the 12 or 14 game win improvement from the year before that. Like another almost double-digit win improvement would be pretty crazy. But yeah, I think 50 wins is possible, but I definitely expect them to exceed their win total from last year. They should have another Southeast Division banner that they're able to hang,
For
right?
sure.
Like,
Yeah.
should be better than the Heat. I do think part of the like confidence is like all of the issues that a lot of these teams were having in like the upper echelon of the Eastern Conference. Like the Knicks had injuries, the Bucks had like cohesion stuff and injuries. Cleveland had injuries. Philadelphia had injuries.
Yeah.
None of those teams are in our division. Like we just don't see them as much as we're going to see Miami, Charlotte, Washington, and Atlanta, right? Like, I think we're clearly the best team in the division.
Yeah.
Should be able to rack up wins in the division. And I think they're going to be better than a lot of teams out in the Western Conference, right? Like the Clippers. The Clippers, they're probably going to take a step back. The Suns, are their big three going to be able to figure out? Who knows? The Lakers are very meh, it seems like, every year. I think we're better than the Pelicans. Are we better than the Warriors now without Klay Thompson? I think that's a possibility. Yeah. Are we better than the Rockets? I would still say so. The Jazz, yes. The Grizzlies, it's sort of a wait and see with Ja coming back and everything like that. We're still going to be better than the Spurs. We're still going to be better than the Blazers. Like the Magic should be able to rack up a lot of wins, like you said, against inferior opponents this year. And I would personally be surprised if they don't end up exceeding the win total from last year, and they should find themselves like squarely in the hunt for home court advantage in the first round.
Yep. Sign me up for all that. Let's just, I think the division's a no-brainer. I think Miami goes another step backwards next year, which is awesome to think about. I think there's a chance we're the only team in the Southeast Division that's in the postseason, which is kind of crazy. But yeah, sign me up for all that.
Again, the Hawks are going to be worse without Murray. Like, the Hornets aren't figuring it out. The Wizards aren't figuring it out.
There's a real world. I mean, the Heat, I mean, they did make it, but barely via the play-in, last season. I think there's a world where they don't even make it to that, which would be awesome. But I could be wrong on that. That's probably my bias speaking. But yeah, sign me up for all that, and I'm just so excited for this season.
All right. Well, another thick boy episode. Woo. This is now over, an hour and a half here. But Kevin, I think that's going to do it. Was there anything else that we didn't get to, or any other opinions that you wanted to share before we wrap it up?
I don't think so, man. This has been fun.
All right, let's do it. Let's wrap this one up. For Kevin Tucker, this has been Jonathan Osborne. You all have been listening to The Sixth Man Show, and we will catch you guys next time. See ya.
Thanks for listening to The Sixth Man Show. Be sure to subscribe on iTunes and Spotify to get new episodes downloaded directly to your phone. If you enjoyed the show, please take a minute to give us a 5-star rating and a review. It helps out the show a lot. Follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Sixth Man Show. We'll catch you guys next time. Go Magic!